Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Chronic. You're also here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 favorite hunter exotics in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, this list is completely subjective based on my own opinion, my own playstyle, and how I use these exotics, so obviously your rankings and your scores are going to differ from mine. And as mentioned, there will be a spreadsheet that you'll see throughout this video, beautiful dark theme, color-coded pictures all over the place, and if you wanted to get your hands on it, it's going to be in the same place as always. Just head over to my Discord server, fully public by the way. At my Discord server in the channel #D2 spreadsheets, you'll find a link to this spreadsheet. And spreadsheets and videos like this would not be possible without your support on Patreon. Now currently I do have a few Patreon people and they are absolute champions, and I really appreciate your guys' support, but I'm not at a point yet that I can do this full-time comfortably, because within the next 6 months or so I might have to stop doing YouTube. I might have to stop doing my spreadsheets. The spreadsheets are definitely the first thing to go, as they take a really long time to do because I need to be able to actually support myself and feed myself. So if you at all use my spreadsheets, or you appreciate what I am creating and you have any amount of disposable income, please check out my Patreon, because in the end $5 a month is really not a lot. So don't wait for somebody else to pay it through so that you can continue getting spreadsheets for free. Please take a look at the Patreon, because without your support this channel may have to discontinue. Moving on to the main content of this video, we're going to be taking a deep dive into my spreadsheets, talking about the meta, endgame PvE content, high skill PvP content, how everything fits together. And again, I'm not really going to be just talking about this top 10, because you can just go to the spreadsheet, or you can see on screen right now, these are my top 10. But what's important is the reason why, how these things interact with each other, how this 8 relates to this 8 in PvP, why certain things like Graviton Forfeit have a total score of 14, but place way lower than a Celestial Nighthawk, which can't do anything in PvP. You know, there's a lot of reasons why, and many of you may understand the example I just gave, but there's a lot of things that you probably haven't seen or taken a look at, and in this video I'm going to be briefly explaining each one of these and how they fit. So basically, I'm giving you the tools to be able to figure it out on your own outside of this kind of video. For all of the other classes, for all the weapons, I'm going to be giving you the right tools, which is not a great idea for somebody that wants you to keep coming to watch my videos, but I want to give you guys the best product that you can get. Moving on, let's go ahead and get into it, starting off with the Assassin's Cowl, which was buffed this season to include all of the charged melee hits to be able to get your invisibility and to get your health and shields back, but overall still, it's one of those exotics that just, I don't find a situation that I really want it. Next up, the Graviton Forfeit, definitely an exotic that was very close to being in the top 10, increases the duration of any invisibility effects and your melee recharges faster while you are invisible. And this whole thing is based around getting your melee to give you more invisibility through the way of the Pathfinder, because the smoke grenade does actually give you invisibility. It is a whole lot of fun, and on top of that, this also is any invisibility effect. So if you get yourself invisible through Rat King, that's also longer, and you can use this to cheese out a lot of different things, and I really like it. Next up, Knucklehead Radar. You get a radar while aiming down sights, kind of like Third Eye from Destiny 1, although there are a few exotics in this game, weapons and armors, that allow you to continue to have your radar, but it's really not that necessary. In PvP, it is a good benefit, but not really that great. Next up, the Aeon Swift. It sucks. Need I say more? It sucks literally monkey balls for all the classes. They really need to take another look at these. Capri Sting allows your melee to instantly cast a smoke, giving you true sight, and your smoke bombs do 150% more damage. That last part was an update that they gave this season. Overall, I just really don't see a scenario that I really want to use this, because oftentimes if you're going into a punch battle, both people are probably almost dead at that point. Mechaneer's Trick Sleeve. You get bonuses with sidearms, being able to ready and reload them faster and getting more damage with sidearms, but the issue is in PvE, you can just use a shotgun, and in PvP, you could just use a shotgun. But hey, sidearms are getting a little bit better. They have been the best that they've ever been, and you know, you might want to give it a try. Oath Keepers, cause bows suck. That's all I need to say. Sealed Ahamkara's Grasp, dealing melee damage, reloads your currently equipped weapon. Can be useful for a number of scenarios, including 1-2 punch or a trench barrel, anything that has to do with needing to reload or having things that are really long reload times. However, punching things is dangerous and not used in endgame content that often. Young Carass Spine, basically bigger trip mines, longer trip mines, and you get trip mine grenade energy when you actually do damage with your abilities. This is actually something that's actually quite good. They actually nerfed the trip mine and then put the buff back into this exotic to make this exotic better in comparison, but the issue is trip mines are really just not that used in PvE or PvP. Lucky Raspberry, you get more grenades from chaining your arc bolt grenades between enemies, arc bolt being really good for PvP, something that you can use to enhance a hunter's neutral game, which is not the strongest part about their kit, but is something that is useful. Ophidius Spathe, you get an extra knife. In my opinion, an extra knife really does not matter unless you have solar plexus. Whenever the artifact goes around and you see solar plexus, you can actually make this do a lot of damage and might be worth it. But otherwise, who cares about an extra knife? Rage use Hardness allows you to have better guarding, so it's kind of like the new sword tactics where you want to guard and defend your teammates, and you can also end your super early to save some of that super. But again, I just don't see a scenario that I really want this. When it comes to super use, I want to use it to kill a lot of enemies. So you might as well have Raiden Flex, which allows your super to last like 2 to 3 times as long. Dragon Shadow, it's all about getting really fast after dodging, reloading all your weapons, increasing both movement and handling speed, basically the ninja armor, and has some uses in PvP. The 6 Coyote, you get an extra dodge, and outside of using this with Wormhusk Crown, I really don't care about an extra dodge. You can use this technically to reload your weapon or get your melee back if that's something that you really want, but it's the same reasoning as the extra melee. Why would you want it? You can just use a single dodge or a single melee. It's really not that big a deal. You can just use an exotic that charges your stuff faster, and it's just, in my opinion, better. The Frostys. Ironically, the thing I was just talking about, increase your grenade, melee, and dodge recharge while you're sprinting, and dodging increases your sprint speed. The issue here is that the generation is very minimal, and they did nerf it this season, making it so it did not stack multiplicatively with other bonuses. Multiplicatively with other bonuses. Gemini Jester allows you to disorient and remove the radar of everyone around you in a pretty decent radius. In PvP, does have some uses. Ironically, the thing you'd want the most with it is an extra dodge, but you can't have that with another exotic. And I'm not kidding, this thing actually does disorient me. It gives you like a flash on screen, removes your radar, completely loses where all the enemies are, and is something that could be used to great avail in PvP. Lucky Pants, it's all about the hand cannons, but the things that you really don't care about hand cannons, like loading one round to the chamber for getting precision hits, or readying faster and more accurately after swapping to them. The only real situation that I find this useful for is if you need to swap quickly to a hand cannon. And the only situation I see of this is using a bow to twink a headshot on someone, quickly swap to a hand cannon to finish off the target. That kind of wombo combo is the only one that really makes sense to me. And finally, the Bomba Deers. Dodging leaves behind a bomb that explodes after a little while, damaging enemies around it. Again, you can't really rely on something like that because it depends on your dodge. Ironically, you'd want another dodge, but you can't do that. Right, with the main section of the exotics out of the way, let's go ahead and get into the top 10, starting at number 10, working our way backwards with a little bit more detail than the previous items. First up, we have the Shinobu's Vow. Improves skip grenade, which means that you get more little twiddly bits in your skip grenade, better tracking. You also get an additional skip grenade charge, and any one of those damages also return energy to your skip grenade, allowing you to get more skip grenades, meaning that is something that is quite good in PvP, and getting more grenades is something that's always really nice to have in PvE, just always good as a good amount of damage for a lot of enemies. And honestly, one of the better neutral game options for the hunter, as the hunter does not really have that much neutral game. And by neutral game, I mean melees, grenades, stuff like that. To be honest, the best use for this item is when we're having an event that increases your grenade recharge rate in some way, like during the Revelry, where you could literally infinitely throw these things because you'd recharge it really fast, and you'd also just get a lot of it back from just hitting enemies. Then in Crucible, you could just infinitely throw this thing. So if any event comes by that has this, or if you're playing a strike with Grenadier, this thing is excellent. And helpful tip, whenever Aranuk is the boss for Menagerie, there's always Grenadier in the heroic version. So this might be your best friend. Next up, let's talk about the Gwynsin Vest, an exotic that has fallen quite a ways over time. Used to be like in the top 3 for sure. Each Spectral Blades kill you make before going into stealth, which means the heavy attack, will restore more of the super energy. So this is basically a super extending exotic. Now what's really great about this is in PvP, the Spectral Blades is a very, very powerful exotic, allowing you to basically get across large distances with your melee attacks and have a decent amount of resistance while doing it. However, it's not as good as it has been in the past, and they have nerfed the resistance on a lot of supers as well, so the hunters have kind of been all over the place with Arc Staff, with Spectral Blades, and some even still using the Golden Gun. That's me. I like shooting people, don't at me. And for PvE reasons, it just doesn't give you enough super energy back, and it doesn't do really that much damage, especially compared to the Raiden Flex, which is obviously the crown holder here. Raiden Flex is just ridiculous. Moving on to number 8, we have the Faux Tracer, an exotic that functions very similarly to the best part of the One-Eyed Mask, being able to see enemies through walls. Its main perk visually marks targeted enemies, which means you basically have to look at the enemy, and you can see the hit marker through walls. The enemy will disappear behind walls and you know exactly where they're going. Dealing more damage to low health enemies don't really matter because that is literally like 10% below, and in PvP that almost never is important. Now obviously the One-Eyed Mask was a little bit better because with this you're actually shooting and tracking an enemy that you already know where they are, whereas One-Eyed Mask gives you an idea where someone is that you potentially did not know where they are. But this is still something that is really powerful that a lot of people are sleeping on. And the PvE version of it is doing more damage to low health marked enemies can be useful against bosses, because a 15 or 10% below boss you do more damage to, and that's just nice to have. Coming up at number 7, we have Liar's Handshake. This is going to be your melee based exotic where your arc melee abilities or being hit by a melee attack will allow you to follow up, which means the next melee ability, with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch that will heal you. Now this can be used in so many different scenarios. For example, if using 1-2 punch, allowing you to just shoot a shotgun into a large boss and then get extra damage with that, combine that with Liar's Handshake. It does not multiply anymore because that was ridiculous before, but you can still get more damage, combine those two, and it's just a lot of fun. However, in PvP, obviously being melee to then melee them for a one-shot melee, or being able to follow up with a second melee to do more damage, really just doesn't happen or is not really that beneficial in PvP. And also stay tuned because tomorrow's video is going to be involving this exotic and some Wormite cells, and that's going to be some fun. Moving on to number 6 in this countdown, we have the Worm Husk Crown, an exotic that's used quite prevalently in PvP, where dodging gives you a small amount of health and shield bump, basically just a little bit healing you, maybe giving you a little bit like half of your health and shield back, allowing you to re-engage in the target with more health, allowing you to escape enemy fire, being able to survive a little bit more. Is just an excellent exotic to have no matter what you're doing. It even has some uses in PvE to be able to survive different engagements. If you feel like you're gonna die, you can instantly say, hey, I have more health no matter what you're doing. Personally, this is my PvP choice because I'm more of a defensive player. I like to escape combat a little bit more, stay a little bit more at range, whereas things like these Stompies allow you to be a bit more aggressive. Moving on to number 5 in this countdown, we have the Shards of Galanor, an exotic that has been somewhat forgotten by the community. A lot of people may question why it's here because of the fact that a lot of super generating exotics got nerfed back a few seasons ago. Things like Darum Kara, Shards of Galanor, Phoenix Protocol, all these things gave you less regeneration, but in my mind, getting any amount of super, like a third of your super, or a fourth of your super, or a half of your super back, is a significant boost, especially in endgame content. Being able to use your super more frequently, have your super faster, so the next DPS phase you can have it, being able to just demolish enemies more consistently is something that is extremely useful and super endgame content friendly. Now in PvP, you're not often gonna get more than 2 supers a game, but oftentimes you won't be able to use that second super, but with Shards, you'll almost always be able to use that second super and always use it before the enemy has it. And the last note I'll say about this is that Shards is more of like an anti-major, anti-elite kind of exotic, whereas Celestial is more of an anti-boss exotic. Moving on to number 4, we have the Raiden Flex, which I still maintain to be the literal #1 best ad slaying super and exotic in the entire game. I have counted it, and you can get 26 light attacks in this super if you're hitting a boss the entire time. On top of that, you have a major amount of resistance. You can see on screen right now, literally me meleeing this sword boss in the Reckoning tier 3, and the guy is not doing anything to me, and I am actually just doing a lot of damage for a really long time. The only issue, and the only reason this is not closer to the top, is that ad slaying supers are really not as important as they used to be. Back in the day, when we only had primary weapons, it was a lot more difficult to kill enemies, so supers are things that we depended on to be able to kill vast amounts of them. But ever since getting special weapons, being able to snipe enemies from a distance, having shotguns for DPS, or just having weird, crazy versions of special things, it allows us to kill a lot more enemies, and Bungie hasn't really adjusted for that. They've kind of just given us more enemies to fight. And when I say this is my favorite super exotic in the game, I am considering Doomfang, I'm considering the Trample from Titans, I'm considering Dawnblade, I'm considering all of this, and this still, in my opinion, is gonna be your best option. It's so much more consistent, you don't have to get kills, you just have to get hits. It's an excellent thing to have. However, in PvP, getting hits to give you more damage or getting hits to give you more longevity is not something that's that useful. Moving on to number 3 in this top 10 countdown, we have the Orpheus Rig. This may be a bit of a contentious placement, especially at number 3 in this top 10, but let me explain why this thing is so amazing. First of all, if you've never heard of it, it provides ability energy, which includes super by the way, for each enemy tethered by Deadfall, which is part of Way of the Trapper, and Mobius Quiver has more shots, which is part of Way of the Pathfinder. Now the most important thing to use this with is going to be Way of the Trapper, allowing you to get your super back from using your super. Now similarly to the Shards of Galanor, these super generating exotics have been nerfed many times over time, and this is one of the ones that also has been nerfed. On top of that, it also was nerfed again this season to give you a maximum of 50% of your super back from using your super. Now this may be the final straw to a lot of people, but outside of Reckoning with the infinite Shadow Thrall spawning, getting your full super back with the new super generation rules was not really that frequent. You would tether 8 people, you'd get around 50% of your super. It really wasn't that affecting of how it's being used now. So if you liked using it last season, you can use it pretty much the same way this season without much difference. And on top of that, if you did not know, the Orpheus Rig locks down a lot of the enemies in the area, shares damage between all of the enemies, not a full 100% damage because they nerfed that as well, making it so it's 50% shared damage between enemies in the area around it. It also gives you more damage against them because it debuffs the enemies similarly to how Divinity debuffs. It also summons orbs for every enemy that is tethered in that tether, allowing your teammates to get their supers more frequently. So overall, Orpheus Rig is just that ultimate support super, allowing you to give supers to your teammates, give gun damage to your teammates, lock down enemies, ad slay. It's an incredible super to have. On top of that, I consider the Night Stalker for the Hunter to be the best neutral game. It has grenades like Vortex, which I really like. It has the Smoke Bomb, has the invisibility effects. It's just my favorite to have. And outside of doing DPS to bosses, Orpheus Rig is my PvE choice. Moving on to number 2 in this countdown, we have the Stompies. Now this is an exotic that I personally do not use, but I do understand its usefulness and its effectiveness, and it is got to be the #1 PvP exotics for Destiny 2 hunters. Now if you've never heard of it, it does a number of things that may surprise you. It increases sprint speed, slide distance, and improves the different jumps for the hunters. Now by improve, it means that you jump higher with it. So high jump, triple jump, you go up faster and you go up higher. Now, on paper, this doesn't seem like something that would be that amazing, but once you use it in practice, you'll see that you're gonna confuse your enemies. If you jump up really fast, really high, that enemy has to look up a lot more, meaning that they'll have to take more time to acquire you as a target. They also have to take more time to acquire your teammates as a target if they do kill you up there, allowing your teammates to more effectively get you. And just in general, it's such an annoyance to deal with because they're just all above you, and every time somebody goes above me, I lose them. If you ever see me in PvP, just go above me and you win that fight. I don't know what it is, but I have no situational awareness. On top of that, you know, slide distance is also something that many people may overlook. People are sliding all over the place in Crucible, and it's very effective to slide. In PvE, there are also some uses, being able to sprint faster, allowing you to get around the battlefield through strikes faster, being able to jump higher for different jump puzzles is something that is useful, but is not really that common. And finally, coming up at number 1, we have the Celestial Nighthawk. In my opinion, the undeniable king of PvE endgame DPS to bosses. This thing is insane. If you've never heard of it, basically it modifies the golden gun to fire a single high damage shot, so it takes all 3 shots, turns into 1 shot that does 6 times the damage. Outside of the fact that there's a recent buff to sharpshooter allowing you to do more damage per shot with those 3 shots, this thing still does significantly more damage than that, and it also does it in a shorter period of time. This is very important. Being able to pop your super, shoot 1 shot, and get back to your gun very quickly is a lot more effective than needing to use your super the entire time over the period of like 15 seconds when it comes to boss damage. And I've actually measured this DPS. If you consider the time it takes from popping the super to being able to use your weapon after the super ends, you take the damage divided by that number, this thing has 60,000 DPS. Compared to the highest DPS weapon in the game, the Wisp of the Worm, around 30,000 DPS. Celestial Nighthawk is almost always gonna be your DPS king no matter what you're doing. So if you got hunters in your raid, put on Celestial Nighthawk, they will always be the DPS kings. And if they're not, their weapons suck. To be honest, there's really not much more to say about it. This thing does insane damage. It allows you to do insane DPS because it's so fast, and all you have to do is just put on this helmet. On top of that, you can use it more frequently if you're killing enemies. So for elites, for like mini bosses, it allows you to just get your super back, which is really cool. But that's it. That is gonna be the end of this countdown. Let me know in the comments down below what kind of exotics that you like to use, and of course tell me the reason why. Please compare it to some of the other exotics on this list. Please compare it PvP and PvE uses so that we can have a better conversation and I can make it better for the next time I do this kind of video. And of course, huge shout out again to my Patreon supporters. Without support from them and support from more people like you, I'm not going to be able to continue doing what I'm doing. And if you really like these spreadsheets, you really like these videos, and you really like the time and effort that I make to be able to make these the best content that it can be, please consider pledging on Patreon, because $5 a month really is not a lot. And I made a calculation: if 0.01% of my subscriber base gave me $10 a month, I could make minimum wage. And that's all I want. Honestly, I will make minimum wage for the next few years if that's what I'm doomed to do. I will do that because I love doing what I'm doing, because I'm playing video games, I'm talking to people, I'm being part of a community, and I'm doing something I love. So thank you for watching. Thank you to the Patreon people, and thank you for anybody in the future who will be on my Patreon. You guys are rock stars. But that's it. My name is Nightchronic. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you guys on the next one.